And welcome back to Caps Hockey Review. Back with you again following three more games, another three-game edition of Caps Hockey Review coming your way. I apologize, I did not intend for this to be a three-game edition. My lovely fiance came up with COVID. I had to vacate our apartment for a few days and my usual recording space was not available to me, but excuses, all that aside, I am thrilled to be back with you. That is my reason for being thrilled today. The reason I'm not so thrilled, and we're skipping the intro, we're skipping all of this. If you're looking for a blow-by-blow of each of these three games, this ain't the video for you. This team, this Capitals team, I'm going to talk about some kind of alarming trends we've been seeing, and I've been discussing here and hoping that this goes away. It's just a speed bump. And maybe all this is just a speed bump, but it's been going on long enough that I'm starting to have legit concerns. So I guess on where we'll start. More illness updates, more injury updates. Unfortunately, it never stops. I think it's just going to be a constant all year. John Carlson missed the game in Vancouver with COVID. Orlov was out for both the Islanders and Canucks games. Also, Carl Hagelin was out for the Islanders game. It doesn't stop. TJ Oshie left the Islanders game early in the first period with an upper body injury. He did not return and did not play on Sunday. So more concern for TJ. He's had a rough go with injuries this season. Hopefully it'll turn around here. But for the Caps, I mean, more lineup changes, it's, my goodness. I think at this point, Ovechkin's the only guy who hasn't missed a game this year. That's how tough it's been. And I realize that there are other teams out there who have it just as bad as the Caps, but man, it just seems like they've been down bad for a lot of this season. Getting out of that, because injuries, illness, that's been a constant all season, but what hasn't been a constant and what's becoming very alarming seemingly is their inability to put together a full 60-minute performance. I have talked about this exact topic so much from my writing days to now doing videos. The inability of this team to put together complete 60-minute efforts on a consistent basis is as troubling as it gets. There is nothing more, I think, dangerous for a hockey team to fall into bad habits. And I mean, this is what Laviolette was brought in to change. Reardon clearly was not getting the best out of this team. They brought in Peter Laviolette to bring this change about. We need to get back to playing the way Barry Trotz had us playing and doing some of those same things. Obviously, they're different coaches. They're going to have different styles. You're not going to have clones. That's not how this works. But Laviolette is very similar to Trotz in that he demands all your effort every game. You may win, you may lose, you may have a rough night, you may have a great night, but what matters here is that you give everything you have, every minute, every shift, every game. And I'm not here to call out individual guys. I'm here looking at this Washington Capitals team in the 2021-22 season. They started great. It was, obviously, I had very good things to say about this team at the beginning of the year, and I still do. I don't want this to be a, dump on the Caps, hour or half hour, but it's going to be more geared to that today, unfortunately. I wish it wasn't, but it is. So, over about the last 6 weeks, I would say December was difficult. That's where the up and down really kind of started for this team and not being quite as consistent, and now it's continued. We're, over halfway through January already, or just about halfway through January, and it still has not changed. So there is cause for concern here, and I'm sure the team is just taking it in stride, part of a season, and players, you control what you control on the ice, and freaking out about it isn't going to change. But us as fans, this is a little bit of what we do. We get a little bit too worked up over our favorite sports teams every once in a while, and unfortunately, that's going to be me today, and I'm sure some other Caps fans as well. The first, and I'm going to hit really on this kind of skid they've been on lately. They've lost five of their last 6 games. They threw in one good one in New York against the Islanders last, it was Saturday. Solid performance. Game was boring as hell. It was, I mean, they played the exact way they had to. They played the same style of game as the Islanders, and they were able to squeak out a win. 2-0, 1 goal in the first period and then not another until the empty netter at the end of the third. So for them, I mean, it's sometimes you have to win that way. Good on them. But the rest of this, I've seen, and I'll kind of break down a little bit as we go. I think I'll just jump in it right now, because the big thing I'm seeing on social media and rumors and, what do the Caps need to do? What needs to change? Goaltending seems to be the most commonly agreed that something has to change. For me, for these Capitals, obviously you have 2 goaltenders with a ton of promise, a ton of potential, but they're still pretty green. I mean, when you look at playoff experience overall, and as we know, I've talked about it before, this team's ultimate judgment comes in the playoffs. The regular season is almost, and it sucks to say this because it sounds like we take it for granted as fans, and a little bit I think we do. We expect this team to make the playoffs. We do not expect there's anybody out there who could keep this team out of the playoffs. Let me tell you, it's a little different this year, but I'll get there. Goaltending. Actually, you know what? Strike that. I am going to start here looking at the Metro Division standings and really give everybody a clear picture of what we're dealing with here. Pardon me while I pull up the graphic here. Metro Division standings. As it sits right now, I'm recording this Monday evening, so as they sit right now, as you can see, Caps still sitting 3rd in the Metro Division. That's fine. That's good enough for a playoff spot. But you got to look at the Penguins, okay? Penguins have a couple games in hand, and they are right behind the Caps. So, I mean, if this downward trend continues, Pittsburgh's trending really hot right now. I would imagine they would pass the Caps by the end of the week, if not by the end of the day, Wednesday, if this continues. If you take a look down at the Atlantic standings, Boston also is hanging around. Now, what does this mean for the Caps? Well, luckily, Columbus is pretty far back in the standings. I don't think the Caps are in danger of falling out of a playoff spot, barring just the collapse of the century, the downward spiral to end all downward spirals. But this is slightly concerning when you consider they were at one point in the season the best team in the NHL standings-wise. And game-wise, playing-wise, they were insanely good for the early part of this season, and this brings me back to another concern. This team, once again, I'm starting to get the fear that this team played their best hockey in October, in November, and it's just going to go down from there. They're never going to find that form again. So I don't know what's changed. Is having Backstrom back in the lineup, maybe guys aren't working as hard? I don't think so. I've seen that a little bit. I disagree with that. The young guys, and I said this in the previous video, the young guys, maybe these guys are coming back down to earth a little bit. That adrenaline wave from having your first few games in the NHL is subsiding. I mean, McMichael and Protis continue to produce, but you've still got, Leeson, Scarbosa. We're seeing a lot of these minor league guys a lot still. So, and it's going to continue. As long as the illness and as long as the injuries continue, this is what we're going to see. So it is concerning. And I guess getting into this goalie issue, I've put it off long enough. I will be the first to admit, I have been more up and down on these goalies. I change my stance a lot on these guys. I apologize, okay? I sat here not too long ago and professed to all of you, my wonderful viewers. I really appreciate you guys. I'll throw that in there here really quick while I'm segueing in that direction. But I've sat here and I've told you guys, Ilya Samsonov is turning into, and he's starting to look like, the goalie that the Caps envisioned he would be when they drafted him in the first round. And I still believe that. I think he's hitting a bit of a rough patch, but the team in front of him, I mean, so many of the goals I've seen get scored on him, some of them are his fault, but there are a lot that aren't. And I've said before too, I will defend goalies more than most. I firmly believe that, yes, goalies, there are goals that go in sometimes that it's like, all right, you got to have a save there. It just, that one can't sneak through, but shit happens, okay? That's not the end of the world, but the team in front of him is starting to make his job harder. And what do I mean by this? Not clearing out the front of the net. I feel like that's where so many of these goals on Samsonov, on Vanacek, on Fucale, it's come from traffic in front of the net and rebounds not getting cleared away. You can make the first save, you can make the second save, but when you're having to make 3 and 4 in one sequence, you're going to give up some goals. I mean, that's just the laws of physics. Humans can't bend and contort themselves in every which direction. I mean, Dominic Hasek could, but the guy's knees looked like they were made of rubber. I don't think we're going to see another guy like that in the NHL. So I don't see either of these two having long-term success with this team if this trend of, poor defense in front of them in that golden area, about that, 10 feet area around the crease, if the Caps cannot find a way to clear that out, get rid of those rebounds, clear out some of those bodies, they're going to continue to struggle. They're going to continue to give up goals, and I've seen they need a veteran goalie. Maybe they do. Okay. I do not completely hate the idea. I'll say that right now. But you could put Patrick Waugh in his prime in this net with the traffic in front of him and the amount of rebounds he would see. I guarantee you he's going to give up some goals, and we'd be seeing countless goalie sticks get smashed over the post, and he might quit on the team. So I agree, okay, a veteran presence would be nice, but who do you get? Okay, I'm going to start right now and tell you Marc-Andre Fleury, because I've seen that one quite a bit. Bad idea. Terrible idea. Here's why. Yes, he's a very good goalie. He will likely be on the trade block come deadline time. But what are you going to have to give up to get Flower? I mean, I can't imagine the asking price is going to be super high. He's on the last year of his deal. That's the key here. Okay, he's on the last year of his deal. He's 38-ish years old, so realistically, how many seasons does he have left? I'm adjusting the lid here, folks. Just a moment. That's a concern. Okay, so let's say they trade for Fleury. What happens if they don't win the cup? Then you're looking at the prospect of this guy you traded away, more picks, prospects, whatever, because that's what it's going to take to get him. Unless they want to trade Anthony Mantha for Fleury straight up, which I've seen a lot of trade Mantha talk. I'll get into that. But trading for a guy who you don't even know who might retire at the end of this season, I don't see the value in it. I just do not at all. And other equally unrealistic options, even more unrealistic, I've seen Carey Price. Caps don't have $10 million in cap space to spare. I mean, when you look at the pieces they're going to have to give up to get Carey Price and make it work with the money, there's no way. He's struggling in his rehab from knee surgery. He, had some problems to start the year. He was in the Players Assistance Program. I am not here to judge. I think it's great the NHL has this program for players, but he was on his way back, but suffered a setback, suffered a knee injury, and I've seen that he's suffered some setbacks within that setback in terms of his rehab. So Even a healthy Carey Price, I think, is absolutely not an option for this Capitals team. Money-wise, it can't work, and the pieces you'd have to give up for a 34, 35-year-old goalie just doesn't make a lot of sense. The third, I've seen a few more, but the third and most likely option, if this team is serious about going out and picking up a goaltender, there's been nothing official from the team, and you don't see it anymore these days, that, oh yeah, we're looking for a goalie. Teams don't come out and say that. The rumor and the most credible or most realistic or believable one I've seen is Braden Holtby. Yes, it would be coming full circle for Holtz. It would make me happy to see him back in a Caps jersey. He doesn't have a high cap hit. He's a Caps guy. He was with the organization for so long, and he knows this team. He knows how they play, and I think, obviously he'd still be a great fit for this team. Of course, that would require a trade. He's only on a 1-year deal with the Dallas Stars. I think the asking price for him, considering his play this year, I think the asking price would be somewhat high. He's really refound himself. He had his last couple of years in Washington, he was trending down. He had a really bad year last season in Vancouver, but the team in front of him was just terrible. So I don't pin all that on Holtz. This year in Dallas, they're a much more structured team. He's really found a resurgence for his career. He's played great. So if the Caps are to trade for a goalie at the trade deadline or sooner, Braden Holtby would be, in my mind, the most sensible option. Just when you look at goalies who would possibly be available at the time. Because you're not going to have somebody like a John Gibson or somebody like that come available. I mean, anybody who's got significant term left on their deal that's worthwhile having, you're not going to trade for him at the deadline. So for my money, it's Braden Holtby. If we have to go get a goalie, if we need some veteran presence for these young guys to lean on and learn from, it'd be Holtz. The kind of guy he is, he seems like one of the nicest people you'd ever meet and would be a fantastic mentor for these two. I would like to see the role switch a little bit. Obviously, in his last year in Washington, he was still the number one guy. Samsonov was his backup. Vanacek backed him up a little bit. I'd like to see that flip if this does happen. Okay, we have these young guys that we want to get them action. We want to keep them in games because it's this old catch-22. You want experience, but your guys can't get experience without experience. You know what I mean? Like, yes, veteran leadership is great and experience is great, but these guys, your young guys, Vanacek, Samsonov, they're never going to get any valuable experience if they don't play, and especially if they sit on the bench in favor of somebody older. Now, am I sitting here saying if they do trade for Holtby and he comes to Washington and just lights it up that they shouldn't go with him in the playoffs? Absolutely not. I think this team should do whatever they have to win another Stanley Cup in these next however many years, however long you want to call this window. We talk about it too much as Caps fans, but it's an easy term. So Holtby, for my money, would be the sensible option here. We'll see how it plays out. I don't think the Caps are really in any big hurry to make a move. Maybe they should be, maybe they are, but just we have to wait and see. This is one of these crappy things. Obviously, I'm not an NHL insider. I don't really have a finger on the pulse of trade chatter or anything like that. So, gonna have to wait and see. Maybe we'll see it this week. I don't know. Moving off of goalies. The Washington Capitals. I gotta say, I've sat here, I've talked about the troubling play these, probably about the last 6 weeks. I mean, I sat here and talked to you so many times. They're up and down. Win, loss, win, loss, win, loss. We want to see them string some wins together. We want to see them get going back on that upward trend and start working toward playing their best hockey. Okay, it's January. Ideally, you want them to peak around March, April. So we need them to get back on track here. They're not going to go from playing bad and inconsistent efforts to the flick of a light switch, they're playing their best hockey. It's going to be kind of a gradual build. So I'd like to see them start getting it back on track. If, like I said, we take the playoffs for granted as Caps fans. And the sad thing is this year, if this continues, if this trend continues where they're, barely 500, they may not make the playoffs. I mean, there are three other teams in the Metro that will definitely be ahead of them if this continues, possibly a fourth, I don't know. And in the Atlantic, I think there will be 4 teams in the Atlantic better than they are if this continues. So at best, if this continues, we're looking at them being the second wild card spot, which would get them probably a first round date with either the Panthers or the Lightning. Eesh, I do not like that. Or the Hurricanes or the Rangers. Those are 4 of the hottest teams in the NHL right now. The Lightning have played fantastic hockey without Braden Point and Nikita Kucherov. I do not want this Caps team to run into that Lightning team first round. I think it would be an absolute just stinker of a playoff series. And keep in mind, this Caps team has not had the most playoff success these last 3 seasons. Yes, we have the Stanley Cup. We have 2018. We will always have 2018. I am so grateful they won that Stanley Cup. Don't think I'm not. Don't think I'm sitting here saying, oh, we only got 1 cup. We deserve more. No, that's not what this is. I'm saying this team, as it's built and with the players they have on this roster and the success that they've had in the past, they should be contending for another Stanley Cup. So obviously, it's on the coach, it's on the GM to put the right pieces in place and utilize them correctly to get there. But looking at this team as a playoff team the last 3 seasons, this team, since that Stanley Cup win, let me put it in these terms. Since the 2018 Stanley Cup win, everybody just take a minute and think how long ago that feels. That Stanley Cup win, Ovi's swimming in fountains, the boys are absolutely hammered at the Nationals game, doing keg stands out of the cup. Think how long ago that feels. Okay. Since then, this Capitals team has won exactly 5 playoff games. Not 5 playoff series, 5 playoff games. And keep in mind, 3 of those came in 2019 against the Hurricanes when they went to 7 games. In the past 2 years, this team has gotten slapped around by the Islanders in the first round and absolutely smoked by the Bruins in the first round last year. That is the reality of this current incarnation of the Washington Capitals. They won that cup in 18 and the narrative became, oh, they've been there before, they know how to win. Yes, they do. But can they do it again? That's the question I think needs to be asked at this point. We know they have plenty of guys on the team that were there for that run and that have won Stanley Cups elsewhere that understand what it takes. But can they do it again? That's what we're here to find out. That's what we're all wondering. That's what we're hoping to see at the end of the season is another Stanley Cup celebration for the Capitals. So, as it sits, what needs to change immediately for this team? Well, you got to string together some consistent games and play that 60 minutes, complete effort all the way around. And look, I'll be honest. In some of these games, I said, I'm not here to dump on this team this whole half hour-ish that I'm on here. This team has probably not deserved to lose all the games they've lost the last 2-3 weeks or so. But they haven't found ways to win those games either. I would say absolutely against the Wild, they deserved a better fate. I'd say yesterday against the Canucks, they deserved a better fate. They played a great game. They controlled the majority of it. But again, it seems like every time they lose, they have some weird stretch, usually in the second period, it always seems like, where they give up 2 or 3 goals in a matter of a couple minutes. And that the wheels just come off and the effort stops. So they have to wake up a little bit. Of course, getting John Carlson back will help. Getting Carl Hagelin back will help. Getting Dmitry Orlov back will help. These are all important pieces of the team. So obviously everybody is. But Orlov and Carlson specifically, those are probably your two best offensive defensemen. The Caps are really good in getting offense from their blue line this year, and not having these two guys makes it tough. But obviously, I mean, with COVID, things are going to continue this way, I'm afraid. So this team's going to have to continue adapting and learning how to play without guys in the lineup. They did it really well early in the season, and I think it's just going to continue. As far as everything else, Anthony Mann at the front, I've seen a lot of things. We haven't seen him lately. Obviously, with the shoulder injury, there's no real indication when we're going to see him. He hasn't started skating yet. Every time I say that on here, I check Facebook or Twitter the next day, and whoever's injured that I'm talking about is skating. So maybe we'll see it, but I'm seeing a lot of trade Anthony Mantha chatter. Look, I'll be the first to say that Jacob Vrana trade, I think, had to happen. I think he needed a change of scenery. He went to Detroit and absolutely blew up. I think he needed it, and I think Mantha needed a change of scenery. Are the Washington Capitals the right change of scenery he needs? I think when you look at Mantha, I think he's a lot like Daniel Sprong in that he's a streaky player. When he's going, he's absolutely going, and he's going to score every night. But when that stops, when he starts to struggle, it kind of goes away for a while. And for a guy that is playing in your top six and, you know, making, I don't really want to talk money, I guess we can talk about, because I've seen it. The guy making as much as he should, you know, shouldn't have any trouble getting motivated. It's, you know, the criticism he had in Detroit. Trading Mantha at this point, I've already said, I don't think we're going to see any trades unless it's like a one-for-one kind of deal. You're not going to give up depth and a player in this season that's been riddled with injuries and full of illness. You're not going to give up a player for a pick or a prospect who's not ready yet. We're not going to see any of that. As far as trade interest, and I know I'm addressing a lot of rumors here. I apologize if this isn't your cup of tea, but there's been a lot of this in this whole spirit of let's trade for a goalie. Let's trade for this. Let's trade for that. Mantha, obviously, while he's injured, realistically, there's not much value. I mean, teams are not going to trade for a guy who's not going to be ready to go for weeks, months maybe. So I don't think it's even an option to trade him while he's on the long-term IR. So let's just get that out of our minds for now. We're obviously, if we see a trade, we won't see it until after he's healthy. Now, finally, I'm trying to pick a spot to wrap up here. I'm running a little long today, but one more thing I just want to kind of touch on. This Caps team, we've talked about injuries, illness all the time. Goalie issues, defensive issues, you know, issues with consistency. I've talked about all of it. But one thing that maybe we need to look at is the power play. Okay, the Caps power play in the last few years is not what it was in those early 2010s days. I mean, back when... Oh, hit a weird button there. I apologize. I'll try to edit that out in post. If I can't, there'll be a weird pause in there, so I apologize for that. But the power play. It was at one time consistently top 3 in the NHL, consistently number 1 there for a while. That has fallen off. And I think it's obvious. I mean, teams, they key on Ovechkin. He is, I mean, everything kind of runs through John Carlson at the top of the, you know, at that center point position, but Ovi's the key. And teams have figured out by keying on Ovi, the whole thing just kind of falls apart. And people may look at this and say, well, I thought their power play is really good. The Ovi one-timer, all that. It is when it works. But looking at power play numbers, here's some disturbing stats for you. The Caps are 3 for their last 15 on power plays in this losing streak, in this, I guess not losing streak, but in the 6 games that they've lost 5 of. They are 3 for 15 on the power play. Now that washes out to about 1 for 5, about 20%. Yes, 20%. Had to do a little math in my head there. 20%. That's not a terrible power play percentage. It is not a great power play percentage by any stretch. I believe the Maple Leafs at the best in the NHL are clicking at about 35%. So really, really not what we're accustomed to, but here's the real disturbing fact here. The Washington Capitals in the month of December scored just 2 power play goals. The entire month of December, the Capitals scored 2 power play goals. That's tough. That's not Caps hockey. I mean, it's not hockey for any NHL team. And what I mean by that is when your special teams struggle, because a lot of teams derive their momentum from the special teams. Power play, penalty kill. Now, the Caps PK is really good. They are one of the best in the NHL. That's awesome. But when your power play just isn't going and it isn't doing what it's supposed to do, not generating shots, not getting zone time, it doesn't work. It creates more momentum for the other team having had a great penalty kill, and it doesn't really do the Caps a lot of good if they can't at least generate some chances. I'm not saying you have to go 6 for 6 on the power play, or you have to click at 50%. It'd be awesome if they did, but it's not going to happen. But they need to at least generate chances, and they need to score more often on that power play. Now, I'm sitting here saying that. Obviously, I've never played in the NHL or even remotely close to that. But from a fan's perspective, and from what I see and what I know about the game of hockey, having a good power play is important. Of course it is. But a team like the Caps, an offensive-driven team, you can derive a lot of momentum from those power play successes, and those power play failures can really, really hurt. So they did really good against Vancouver. They went 2 for 2. Let's hope they can get her going. We saw Ovi with the one-timer. We saw Wilson get one right in the slot. Great passing plays on both. Evgeny Kuznetsov, Nicholas Backstrom, great passing. John Carlson setting up Ovi. I'm sorry, not John Carlson. Justin Schultz. So maybe some positive to build on, but today I know it's a hugely negative edition of Caps Hockey Review. I haven't had to do very many of these in the time that I've done this little series here. So hopefully this will be the last one for a while. I will be back with you I don't know if I'll get to the halfway review in the next one, but certainly in the next week or two, I'll be coming at you with the halfway through review of the season so far and what we can expect moving forward. I've kind of done like a second quarter of the season review because I've hit on all the issues they've had in these last 15 to 20 games. So we want to see it turn around. Obviously, as Caps fans, if you're not a Caps fan and you watch this, maybe you don't. I mean, maybe you're over here all excited. But for me and for any Caps fans, we want to see this slump stop, and we want to get back to that Caps hockey. We want to see a healthy Anthony Mantha. Maybe he'll be a big boost for this team, and we want to see some stability in the net. That's what I'll be looking for. The Caps are back on the ice on Tuesday. I believe they will be going against the Winnipeg Jets. I believe that's correct. The Jets will be in DC. I'm going to take this one game at a time. I'm not going to look forward to the next one after that. Just the Jets. They had a pretty good performance in Winnipeg a couple weeks ago. Hopefully, again, you have to find it. We've seen what they can be. We've seen them do really good things so far, early in the season, and we want to see them get back to that. So that's what I'm looking for. The good things to pick back up, the bad things to go away, to put it in really simple terms. That's what I'm looking for, and hopefully I will be back with you next time talking about 2 big wins to get this team hopefully back on track a little bit. Looking for some guys to get healthy. We'll see. We'll see how it all shakes out. But until next time, everybody, go Caps.